Hello again. This week, a story about Electroplate, or at least a lot that was catalogued in a sale near to me, so it wasn't impossible to go and pick the stuff up, as 2 silver spoons, which were very interesting, very lovely silver spoons, and 4 others electroplated, and they were in for £20 to £40, and that may not sound like the most exciting lot in the world, but it was the most exciting lot coming up at auction that week, I can promise you. Now I'm going to show you the 2 silver spoons, which the auctioneer correctly identified, and they're worth a little conversation on their own. They're 2 tablespoons. We've touched on this before because they're Channel Island silver. They don't have any other marks apart from the maker's mark, and in this case it's TDG over JLG, so that's very useful because that's Thomas de Grucci over the mark of John Le Galley when they were in partnership together, and that was from 1831 to 1846, so that helps narrow the date. This one actually has engraved on the back of it 1835, and because we know their working dates, that absolutely fits. The other one has June the 13th on, so they were obviously meant to be together when that was engraved as a pair, because you've got one part of the date on one and one on the other, which is a very peculiar way to do it, a thrifty way to do it. They were originally, and this is a good object lesson, may not look like it, but they were originally initialed. There's the ghost of an initial, and I'll try and show you that with the close-up camera, and that's just become worn off. I don't think it's deliberately done, but it might have just been very lightly engraved and just strenuously over-polished. The fascinating thing about these 2 spoons is they're by the same makers. They've got this pip, this very shallow drop at the back, which means they're actually Channel Islands made spoons. This is it's a distinction because during the 19th century, lots of spoons were supplied to the Channel Islands. They were either made in Exeter or London, and then they were bright cut decorated. Slightly rarer, if you want to make that distinction, are spoons that were made in the Channel Islands and then engraved in the Channel Islands. So there's a sort of 2-tier system with that. The Channel Islands ones will inevitably be much lighter. You can probably see how thin that is. Very light gauge, and always with this die-struck style of drop at the back. Very thin outline. Almost smooth. The lovely thing about these, and again, it's better to show it in close-up, and we'll go through it, is they have very similar bright cut engraving, but the engraver's sort of clearly got a bit bored, and he's varied everything. So even though the stems of these have got a sort of scrolling line with a little leaf motif between them, and it's very, very similar, but in one, the cartouche is a straight, and in the other one, he just decided to wave them slightly. Just a little bit of variation. Both have flowers engraved below the cartouche, but one is a spray of roses, and the other is a large rose in flower. And this is what I mean by the forgotten folk art of English provincial engraving. So that is rather lovely, and I think these are fascinating and interesting and wonderful spoons, but they weren't the reason I bought the lot. I bought the lot for the other 4 electroplated tablespoons that were with them, and I'll show you them now. And it's these 2 are bright cut engraved, and they are tablespoons, and they are a set of 4, which is rather splendid. But they had some curious marks on the back, and, you know, thank goodness the auctioneer took a photograph of the marks and put it online. I didn't ask for it. It was there on the catalogue, so I could look at it, know what it was, and bid for it. And if you're an auctioneer and you watch these little talks and you take anything away from him, from all of them, it is photograph the marks on the backs of spoons, on pieces of silver you're selling, and put the photograph online. So many times in catalogues you will get a picture and it will just be that of the spoon. We all know what a spoon collectors all know what a spoon looks like. It's nice to see it's got some engraving and an initial if it hasn't, but the thing that tells us everything about the spoon, a bit like paintings really, all the information is on the back. All the information is the marks. So I know you get 2 images on the sale room for every lot, because sometimes the same image is duplicated twice. Get your cataloguer to spend half a day extra just taking, or your photographer, just take pictures of the marks. In this case, it meant the £20 to £40 lot went for several £100s. I wouldn't have requested an image in time of the marks. I wouldn't have known that these were not electroplated. I would have had a suspicion they weren't, but I wouldn't have pursued them to the point that I did with these. So that paid off for the seller, for the auctioneer, and it gave me the opportunity to buy these. So whenever possible, small rant over, or small bit of advice, photograph the back of the marks. Now, what are the marks, you ask, if you're still interested 6 minutes in, which you're probably not. We'll do this in close-up as well. But they are the maker's initials, a symbol, and a single letter. The symbol is a key. This is very important. It used to be very annoying because collectors had no idea where these key-marked pieces of flatware that occasionally turned up all over the place, pieces of silver, spoons, sugar tongs, and the like, where they came from. They knew they were all a cohesive group from some particular area, but it took the great scholar Wynyard Wilkinson, to happen upon examples of this in some military plate that was made for the particular region where it still existed. He came upon it, he did some research, and he positively attributed this mark and these series of makers' marks to Gibraltar. So that opened up about 15 years ago this tremendously exciting area of collecting, the possibility of buying Gibraltar silver. So made by British craftsmen in the main in Gibraltar. You can imagine, whilst there was a trade for silver, not an enormous amount of it was made. Not a lot of it survives. Certainly, it is something of an event to find a Gibraltar spoon, but to find a set of 4 is quite remarkable. What's more remarkable is that they are this pattern, which we often call Celtic taper, Old English Celtic taper with a point, and that they are bright cut engraved in this fashion. If you look at that spoon, you would almost instinctively say that it is Scottish, possibly Irish, possibly even sort of French provincial. There are some French provincial spoons like this. They tend not to have the exaggerated point, but they have this similar decoration. These are clearly made by the goldsmith Henry Cowper. That's the HC mark there. The C mark, I'm not entirely sure whether that is an additional C for Cowper. That's a rare mark anyway. Normally, pieces marked by him are his initials, HC, and a key mark, and they may be repeated again. I have an earlier example that I bought many, many years ago, and that's a dessert spoon, and that shows you Cowper's mark, a key, Cowper's mark, and a key. It also shows you that it's a very standard British or English, Old English pattern spoon. Most Gibraltar silver is based on British patterns. Most of the styles of hallmarking, this you can see is an early example by Cowper, said he's bottom marked, and bottom marking comes is up to about 1780. This spoon is later and bears a type of key punch that's ascribed to about 1790, 1795, which will be fine, and it is top marked. So they copy the fashion, the change of hallmarking position on London silver. And that's the style that they're copying with the things that they're making. But this set of spoons must have been made by special order, probably to replace or to extend items from a set that had been brought in either from Ireland or from Scotland, which makes them doubly rare. What's very unusual is that last year, a pair of these spoons from this set with this same initial by Cowper came up in a specialist auction, all probably catalogued as Gibraltar and sold for many hundreds of pounds. And they are actually the pair that would complete this as a set of 6. So if you're out there and you've got the pair and you want the other 4, let me know. And negotiations can ensue. But they're a fabulous find, and it just goes to show you mustn't put absolute faith in catalogue descriptions. Because remember, these were electroplated, where in fact, as lovely as this pair of Channel Islands tablespoons are, and they are lovely, and we'll look at them in close-up, the great rarity are this sort of unknown, undiscovered set of 4 Gibraltar tablespoons in absolutely splendid condition, and the marks are, I mean, just beautiful. You can see, we're looking close up, you can see how deep and clear and beautiful those marks are. And it's a fortunate day indeed when you find a bit of Gibraltar silver, but it's a remarkable one when you actually find 4 pieces. So there is hope. If you're interested in what the Gibraltar marks are and who the makers are, that is all in one of the Silver Society journals, published in, I think, 2011. And the article is in there, and then there have been subsequent articles. Not everything, just let me say, not everything with a single key mark is made in Gibraltar. There are various European cities that use it as a mark. It appears on some Indian colonial silver as well, and it pops up elsewhere. It's a sort of ubiquitous mark, but for the most part, it always appears, nearly always appears, corrects himself very quickly, nearly always appears on Gibraltar silver. The only exception I've seen are a more elaborate series of marks that come in the 1820s, and some wine labels that have maker's mark only but are also Gibraltar. So that's it for now. Shows you what can be found. Don't trust. So 2 things to take away. Auctioneers, always, for your own financial benefit, photograph the marks on the backs of spoons and put them in your catalogue online. And for collectors, never believe descriptions when people say it's electroplate. Make your mind up for yourself and you can have a happy find. So until next week, good antiques hunting and goodbye.